My name is Fiona Macmillan, and I'm one of the academics in the School of Law at Birkbeck. And I am shortly going to introduce you to the other people sitting on my right. But before I do, I wanted to say a few introductory words for about this session and about what are the aims of it. And also to tell you something else which is important to me as an intellectual property scholar and also a person who believes in free speech. What I'm saying at the moment is being recorded, but the other speakers have said that they might feel more relaxed about saying certain things if they're not being recorded. So we're not proposing to record the contents of this event after I've finished my introductory remarks, which also means that people here can feel relaxed about saying whatever they like in response to what's being said, not that you might have not felt relaxed. Okay, so let me just say a few words to frame the discussion a little bit. The community of scholars, which is what romantic people like me think the university is, has two, as you all know, because you're probably all involved with universities, has two symbiotically related functions from my point of view. Here I'm expressing a personal view, which are, of course, teaching and research. This session of Law on Trial is concerned with the bureaucratic superstructure in which university research is now conducted. And I think it's really important to say at the outset, because I understand that the idea of the research assessment exercise is not a really sexy and exciting idea to get people out, but I think it's really important to say that as long as we as a society believe in the concept of learning and the production of knowledge, then the importance of the research function of universities can't possibly be overestimated. What we teach in universities and what universities contribute to society is exactly the knowledge which is produced through the research function and research process. So now for approximately 25 years in this country, I think, or I stand to be corrected on that, the research activity conducted in universities has been subject to a series of variously named, obligatory, bureaucratic exercises designed to assess the quality of research and also to attach various types of financial consequences to decisions about the quality of that research. Okay, now the cost of these exercises, which is, and here I'm thinking of a very simple cost question, measured in terms of the time devoted to servicing the bureaucracy which this exercise requires, has greatly increased in this period of 25 years because the exercise itself has become more complex and more bureaucratic. The next exercise, and let me say in response to that there is no time now in academic life when we're free from the bureaucratic restraints or constraints of these exercises. So at this very moment, we're in a process where we're being asked to do various things in relation to our research to ensure the inclusion of the research in the 2020 research exercise. So we're already become subject again to this bureaucratic substructure. There also is an enormous industry being built around training people how to play the research assessment game within universities in order to produce optimum results for their university and for their department. Once upon a time, from 2003 to 2009, I was the Pro-Vice Master for Research of Birkbeck, and I was in charge of not the last research assessment process, which was called the REF, but in charge of the research assessment exercise, which is the exercise before. Which means that my name is still on various mailing lists to receive information about these bureaucratic training courses for improving your institution's appearance and success in research assessment systems or types of research assessment exercises. And here I'm using research assessment exercise as a generic term, not as a specific one. So this means I have a reasonable insight into the proliferation of this industry and the amount of courses which are being offered. Its proliferation is actually a bit of a concern because they're expensive to attend these courses, and what they effectively do is take funds out of the university in other words, sort of funds that would support research in university, and put those funds into the hands of usually private training academies, not always, but usually. So having said that, one purpose of the discussion this evening is to put this whole process of this bureaucratic exercise on trial, weighing up its costs and benefits with respect to the process of producing research and knowledge in universities, which is one important site of that of production of research and knowledge in our society. Now, I want to start the ball rolling in this kind of cost-benefit analysis. I'm guessing that the other speakers are going to say this, I don't know, but I want to start the ball rolling by talking about the extent to which realistically it's possible to assess the quality and importance of research in the timeframes envisaged by these exercises. Because research assessment exercises of the type that we've had in the last 25 years in British universities assess research published in the previous 5 years, the 5 years previous to the date on which, 4 or 5 years, on the date to which the assessment is made. And there are two methodologies which have been advanced for doing this type of research assessment. One is a type of qualitative peer review methodology, and the other is a so-called bibliometric assessment, which is a quantitative assessment which measures things like the rate of citation or the rate of gaining external research funds. Of course, bibliometric assessment is really just a type of quantitative form of peer review, because in a sense, the amount of times you're cited or the amount of times that your colleagues think you deserve external research funds is a way of expressing a view about your quality as a researcher. So the exercises we've had so far, however, haven't used bibliometric approaches, although they're constantly there floating around in the background as a type of possible approach. So far, the methodology used in these assessments is a qualitative peer review methodology. Professor Donald Gillies, who is a philosopher of science at University College London, and who unfortunately can't be with us this evening, has made a very substantial study over the period of the last two exercises, and made an interesting conclusion. He's concluded that measuring the quality of research in this way is not only impossible, in the sense that you can't generate reliable results about quality, but also produces negative results. And I want to just read you, with his agreement, I told him I would do this, a couple of passages from a recent paper he's written about this, just to summarize what he said. And this is really just as a way of stimulating debate and discussion. The defect in the system, he says, is a simple one. The study of history of science shows that it is not in fact possible for researchers to give accurate assessments of contemporary research. After 20 or 30 years, the assessments of a piece of research have normally reached a consensus which does not change much thereafter. And he bases this on a whole lot of case studies of important developments in research. However, this consensus after 20 or 30 years may be wildly different from the judgments which were made at the time the research was first produced. Research which was then thought to be really important may, after 20 or 30 years, be seen as the exploration of a blind alley, while research which was thought to be of no value may, after 20 or 30 years, be seen to be a crucial breakthrough. And he actually cites, interestingly enough, in the terms of scientific research, research on the relationship between cervical cancer and various different types of viruses, exactly demonstrating this, a recent demonstration of this. He says, as a result, relying on research assessments introduces a systematic and negative distortion into the research community. It tends to stifle important innovations while encouraging routine research of the rather dull and boring character, in the sense that things which are already accepted in the research community. Research assessment systems are also very expensive, as I've also mentioned. They increase the costs of research while reducing the quality of the output and make the organisation less efficient. Now, on the negative effects of research exercises, Professor Gillies says something which I find quite disquieting. He says, there are two types of errors in the allocation of funds for research in universities. The first error occurs when funds are not available to researchers whose research would have obtained excellent results had it been carried out or had it been continued. That's one error. The second error is when research funds are made available to research which is ultimately may be of little value or may turn out historically to produce no particularly important results. He says if research assessment exercises of the sort we've had have had any positive results, it is that they've tended to, in a sense, eliminate the second type of error. That is, they may have identified the type of research which is not regarded as sound by the research community and perhaps remove funds from that type of research. But his argument is that the history of knowledge production in universities shows that the first type of error, that is denying research to important research which needs funding but can't get it, is much more important, is a much more important and serious error with regard to the stimulation of academic research. Whereas this second type of error, funds are misallocated to not very exciting projects, is obviously not a good thing, but may not cause particular damage in the long run, except for the fact that, of course, the funds are not going to other research. Okay, so with these thoughts as an introduction to our discussion, with which I obviously agree, because otherwise I wouldn't be citing them, I want to open up our discussion on the question. First, what I'm going to do is invite our three panelists to address various aspects that they've chosen on the question of the effect of research assessment systems on the life of the university. And then I want to open up a more general discussion with the audience here and the panelists. But first, let me introduce the panelists. So next to me, I have Professor Diamond Ashkabor from SOAS School of Law. Diamond headed up the law exercise the last time at SOAS, so she has a number of insights about it. I don't know what they are, but we'll see. Then next to Diamond is Professor Alan Norrie from the University of Warwick, who's the head of school at Warwick, but also was on the panel, the Law Research Evaluation Framework panel. This was the panel that made assessments in the last research assessment exercise. Okay, and Alan may or may not tell us some interesting things about that. We'll have to wait and see. I'm sure he'll say interesting things. What he says about that panel, I'm
already feeling really guilty about having been on it.
But it wasn't meant as a critic. So no, that's another interesting question, actually, that we can look at, because we have this problem, which is either we engage with this process, in a sense, in order to defend the type of research which we regard as important from being written off out of the pit, or we say, actually, we really don't think that we should engage with this process because it's not a good process and it's producing negative results. And that, for us in the universities, is a very difficult question to answer. And in fact, when Alan became a member of the REF panel, there was a great rejoicing in the critical community. Am I allowed to say this? There was great rejoicing in the critical community because the critical law community felt that there was somebody on the panel that in fact understood the type of research produced from a critical legal perspective. So we have got a very serious question of strategy in engaging with these exercises. And then at the end of the table is my own colleague here from Birkbeck Law School, well known to many of you, Dr. Stuart Mother, who will speak last, I think, because he's an internal person and we like to invite our visitors to speak first. So perhaps if I can just go in from here, invite Diamond first and then Alan.